Empowered to lead. Wired to learn.
Hello, and welcome to Power Test 26 in Nashville, hosted by NETA, the International Electrical Testing Association. I'm Ellen Parson, Editor-in-Chief of EC&M Magazine, and I'm here today interviewing subject matter experts from Power Test who gave presentations this morning or this afternoon to the Power Test audience, also that relate to EC&M's audience, what kind of themes resonated that I thought would be good for our listeners, viewers, and readers. And yours was one of those. So this is Mose Ramieh. He is the Vice President of Business Development at CBS Field Services here in Nashville.
Here in Nashville, Tennessee. Welcome to Nashville, everybody.
Yeah, I think it's been a great event so far.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've heard a lot of people talking about the great training, all the different sessions. And so we're excited to pick your brain on what happened in your session, what kind of questions you were getting.
Okay.
And basically just go over what your session was on. Let's tell them what that was. Becoming the technician.
Yeah.
So how to elevate reliability, excellence, and trust in electrical field services. So that sounds probably easier said than done, right?
Absolutely.
So to start out with that, like what made you come up with that theme? And then why is that an important topic to cover in this setting?
Well, the concept came from a gentleman by the name of Ryan Avery. And he planted this idea that there's a difference between a technician and the technician in my head. Or worse yet, what I would hear from time to time is, I'm just a technician.
Oh.
And what the industry needs is not just another technician. We need people that can uphold some really, difficult at times work ethic and be willing to learn and take the time that it takes to do the job right.
And the high standards, definitely.
Yeah, high standards, absolutely.
So you started out with, I think you went over 5 commitments that you really need to buy into that need to be developed. So could you go over those and what the key takeaways are from those 5 things and how that builds the technician?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was, as I developed this, what it takes to be the technician, it did come down to 5 commitments for me. The first commitment is I control how I show up, right? How do we look when we get out of the truck? Do we take care of our equipment? Do we communicate in a professional way, right? How do we show up? That's the number one thing. And that's really basic blocking and tackling in a lot of cases, right?
But some of those things the obvious things get overlooked, and then that's really important. We've run that in EC&M. Like some of the articles we think won't do that well are very, very popular because it's like, oh, wait, I'm going to use this for training because these things are critical and we're not really emphasizing them enough. So
well, that's right. I mean, and once again, how we do anything is how we do everything. So if we don't get the basics right,
it's all downhill from there.
I mean, a quick sidebar, the reason that they teach you how to fold your socks when you're in the Army is because if you can't learn how to fold your socks, I can't trust you with a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment, right? So, get the basics right. So next after that is I am coachable, or I stay coachable. Because once again, as we, coachable is not about being the smartest person in the room. It's about being the one that's willing to learn, right? And I didn't say this, I've missed this in the presentation, but, being coachable, it determines who accelerates the fastest. The technician that learns the quickest is the one that's coachable. I think number 3 is, for me, is I listen. So once again, and it kind of dovetails into being coaching. If I'm not listening while I'm being coachable, right, then I'll miss out on something. But it for me in this particular application is also, I listen beyond the words, beyond the technical. We spend a lot of time talking in technical language.
Yes.
I've spent a lot of time in my career telling people things as opposed to listening to them. So once again, I think that's super important, is to listen to their emotions, because as in the story I shared, the technician didn't ask for help, but I could hear that he needed it. And by showing up on the job, by listening beyond the words, into the silence, we were able to share the emotional weight on the project that he was carrying by himself.
That's really important. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, you feel like you're on an island sometimes, even with modern technology of phones and communications and emails. And that was another thing I was talking about, is that was not a great case for using email. Number 4 is I own the outcome.
Okay.
And for me, this is really important because once again, if we think about, I'm just a technician, that's the wrong attitude. If we own the outcome, it changes how the job goes. It changes how the work gets done. And as I pointed out during the presentation, the most junior technician can own doing a great job on their test reports.
Yeah.
That's once again, basic stuff. But if I'm the technician and I own that work, then it's going to get done and done right. And as we get old, as we get more into project management, maybe we own the fact that the test equipment has gone down and I got to find a replacement, or the project's slipping behind schedule. And I've got to be the one that has to step into that difficult conversation with the customer and own the fact that we're going to solve the problem.
Right. And that's probably a difficult step to teach. Right.
That one is really difficult. It does take sometimes being out on that island and being the one that has to step into that.
Okay.
So,
all right.
So that is one that can be a little bit more difficult to, I think, teach.
To master.
And to master. And
okay.
Because every situation is a little different too.
Right.
But if we own it, if we have the right mindset, that ownership mindset, we create better solutions.
Okay, perfect.
The last one is I get to build others, right?
Okay.
Or I build the next generation of the technician.
Yeah.
So we take all of these skills and we begin to, once again, multiply ourselves. I avoided this during the presentation, but I hear a lot of times when I'm interviewing technicians that have been in the field for a long time, they're like, I've got all this knowledge, but I don't want to go to the field. I've got all this knowledge, but I don't want to travel and do jobs out of town. And part of what matters to this industry and where we get back to how do we get more technicians is we've got to go to the field and lead from the field.
Yeah.
We have to go there and work on the job alongside of technicians to help them grow.
That's right.
So that we can have, don't level up out of the field, have an impact in the field.
That's important. And so what have you seen in the years you've been doing this a while? Like the labor shortage has been ongoing, the skilled labor shortage. You've always had a shortage of technicians. So you don't see that changing? Do you think it's getting better? Like how do you cope with that reality that there is this labor shortage, but you still have to do the work and you have to grow?
I believe that it's going to take a combination of things to overcome this labor shortage. And one is being intentional about hiring young individuals that maybe college wasn't for them, right? Hire young people that want to work with their hands, but also want to use their heads, and then begin to teach them. And I really believe that we can take just about any individual that's got the desire, the passion, wants to own their outcome a little bit, just that little piece of their world. And in 6 months, we can make them the word that comes to my head is serviceable, usable, somebody that could actually bring value on a job. And that's not a very long time. I mean, 6 months to get to a place where you're contributing.
And then you're a highly technically skilled person that can advance and your future is bright. The industry is bright. Right.
And like I said, after a year of knowledge and then 2 years, you're sitting for your NETA 2 exam. But it is a 2-year commitment.
Right.
On both parts, right? The company has to commit to bring the person on board and the person has to commit to do the work.
Yes, definitely. You touched on appearance and professionalism, and those sound like basic things.
It does sound like basics.
But they matter. So how do those things directly impact the credibility on a job site, do you say? Like, is that from the employer standpoint, a perception standpoint, all around? Like, how does that enhance credibility?
Once again, it's a personal thing for me. That when our technicians get out of the truck, our culture is we want to present a great image for our clients, right? They will naturally gravitate to the individual that looks the sharpest.
Yeah.
Right. If the suit shows up on the job, which it doesn't, but if it did, that attention would turn in theory to that individual. I've seen it happen.
Yeah.
Right. I've been the technician with the responsibility, but somebody else, with more gray hair even, sometimes is the person they turn their attention to. But it does come back to first impressions, right? If you get out of the truck looking like a slob and I don't know you, first impressions are made in 5 seconds or something. I mean, and you could change my mind and I could find out that you're an amazing technician.
Right.
But it's a hurdle that you have to overcome as opposed to you look sharp and your tools are squared away, your test equipment looks great.
What about, I know in the presentation you talked about documentation. I think isn't that important just as important as the work itself?
Oh, well, absolutely. I mean, the test report is the product in a lot of cases. And so,
and knowing that skill too, maybe that's not one of their skill, that's something you have to develop as well.
Right. I mean, let's face it, technicians are not necessarily the most meticulous with the paperwork, and it will drive you crazy. But once again, I think that goes back to the culture. I think it's like so important. Like, hey, own this piece.
Okay.
Right. Own that piece.
So with the ownership theme, in real world scenarios, especially under pressure, how what advice or best practices do you have to take that ownership? And maybe they don't feel comfortable, or maybe they are scared to speak up. Like, I can imagine some of the things that would come to mind when you're a new technician that you're a little, intimidated.
Absolutely. And that's interesting, because I'm sure I could think of half a dozen different stories where I was in a difficult position and intimidated.
And if you don't, should I speak up? How do I handle this?
And I think partly your experience will guide you, but then there's also the amazing opportunity that we have to pick up the phone, right? And explain the situation to somebody else. And the opportunity then, I guess, to learn from the other technicians about how they might approach this. And I will say this, in one way that I think it shows up, and it might be a little bit easier to understand, is, we teach our technicians that, particularly when it's an outage situation, like an unplanned event, right? And they're the first responder. And the client can sometimes be very demanding, like, I need this power back on right now. And the technician, in theory, needs to do their processes, right? Yeah. To make sure that it's, de-energized, and I got to get my PPE, and I got to do my GHA, and all that takes a little time. And the customer can be like, I need this done, right?
When's it going to be done? What are we going to do?
Right. And they can be rushing them. And they can also be, like, say, demanding, and even ask us to do things that are unsafe.
Unsafe, right.
And so, like I say, every technician has that, and they need to own this, right? Stop work authority, and then get a senior person, a person that has more experience in dealing with a difficult customer on the phone, like myself, or like some of our other senior leaders. Okay. Because when you get a supervisor, a vice president, or a president on the phone, all of a sudden the customer can tend to respond differently.
Which isn't necessarily fair, but it's reality.
It is exactly. Yeah. But once again, that goes back to we do have it does need to be a teamwork, collaborative effort to handle difficult situations, to handle the challenges that come up.
Did you give advice in the presentation on like best practices for establishing kind of this culture in order to, how do you do that?
Yeah.
What's your advice there?
I didn't really get into the best practices, but a question like that came up. And it was about, ultimately it's about the culture, right? And, I use the 5 commitments to help outline what that feels like. And that was part of when I was doing the development on the presentation. I was having a hard time putting words to things, but I knew what it felt like. Yeah. I knew what it felt like because I feel it a lot. I see it, and I know it when I see it. You know it when you see it. I can interview or talk with a technician for 10 minutes
and immediately know that's going on.
Where we're at as far as those things go and how well they'll fit into the culture.
Well, how does that though? How do you shift their mindset then as far as to grow beyond this basic set of competence with the technical skills of what they know? Like, how do you convince them or encourage them to have that shift in mindset that you're going to be doing? It's very multifaceted. There's all these other parts to this. And you're going to be more successful if you can master these other areas.
I think it's important just to raise that as a thing that we need to train on.
And talk about it.
Because once, as I started off the presentation, we refer to this as soft skills. They're not soft skills. They're professional. It's a professional identity. Okay. It's how you think about yourself and you think about your craft. And so I think it's, just like we teach people how to test a circuit breaker, we need to teach people how to have a difficult conversation. Role play. Okay. Yeah, we can role play. We can talk about how when we see somebody that turns in an incomplete test report, hey, you're not owning this. In school. Right, you're not owning this. And so we can have those conversations if we identify those things that fit in our culture, right? And everybody's culture is a little bit different. There might be different commitments for other folks. Right. But
just to talk about those and outline what's expected, like what could happen, that's great advice.
Exactly. And once again, and going back to the coachability, when you feel that rub, that's a disconnect in the culture. Like if you see a technician that's not working safe, or maybe taking a testing shortcut or turning an incomplete report, that friction that you feel is a misalignment of the culture, and they need that immediate feedback. We can't wait to feed that back to them in 3 months or 6 months in another review.
And how often do you do that? Then that's why you're saying it's important to be in the field. That's why you need to be there oftentimes. And
oftentimes be there and provide immediate feedback. And that, if we're coachable and we can put our ego aside, we get the opportunity to receive that input with humility, and then that changes the outcome. right? So
Yeah.
if we walk past somebody and don't give them immediate feedback when it's important, then we lose the opportunity to really change the direction
That's a great
of
point.
where we're trying to go with building the technician.
Do you find that it's kind of contagious when you see one person doing that and then the rest of them kind of follow suit and like, oh, well, I see that Mose is doing that, so, I can do that, or like they're doing things a certain way.
Absolutely.
Have you seen that happen?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, in the offices, it's always amazing when somebody that really carries the culture well shows up. It does lift all the boats, right? People tend to move just a little smarter and want to, and maybe depending on how they view the individual, for their level of success or level of leadership, and maybe they just want to, be noticed for stepping up.
And then it makes it not the exception, it's the rule,
right? As
far as like how everyone's handling themselves, and it just goes from there.
Create that culture of teamwork where everybody's picking each other up. I think it's an improv thing, right? How do we help each other out and lift each other up? Okay,
that's wonderful. That sounds like a great place to wrap things up today. Thank you for joining us, Mose. We really appreciate all your insight from the field and sharing your key takeaways from your presentation today at Power Test 26 in Nashville. Thank you.
All right.